Maybe it's the quiet defeat of the final piano chord which releases you from the whirlwind frenzy of musical drama that came before. Maybe it's the unexpected metric modulation that leaves you completely lost before snapping into place just right and bringing you back in. Maybe it's a screaming high note in a solo or a sudden band dropout. Whatever it is, every powerful piece of music features some great, impactful, dramatic moments like this. Every piece that you love, every piece that inspires you, inevitably has some specific event in it that makes you say, "How sick was that?" And with a truly great musical moment, it seems like the whole rest of the piece is just there to make this moment hit as hard as it does. I recently released my second full album with my video game jazz fusion project 8-Bit and the Single Players, titled Get Good, and it features some truly unbelievable performances by some of the best musicians I know. There are shredding solos that'll melt your face off, as well as the most intimate and delicate moments that you'll hear on a jazz fusion record. And for the improvisations and performances of the band alone, this one is absolutely worth a listen. But also, when working on the arrangements for this album, I was specifically thinking about how to put in some kind of dramatic musical moment in each track. Today, I want to use some of the arrangements I wrote for the album as examples of 3 different methods that you can use to create an impactful moment in your own music. The 3 approaches that I want to showcase are: 1. Bring back an old melody in a new way. 2. Isolate an emotionally potent part. And 3. Use contrast to emphasize what works. The first method, and my personal favorite, is to bring back an old melody in a new way. I wrote an arrangement pretty much around this one idea, my most ambitious arrangement on the new album, which I call the Metroid Suite. This track takes a few different themes from the soundtrack of the original Metroid and weaves them together. Not like a medley where you just parade through a series of memorable melodies, but instead having each piece from the game acting like a different section in a coherent, large-scale form. In order for you to get the effect of the melody callback, I'm going to have to walk through the form of the whole arrangement. The callback doesn't really make sense outside of the context of what it's calling back to. So, the tune starts with the iconic intro music from the game, and then bounces back and forth between the heroic Brinstar theme and the ominous Kraid's theme. Now, the emotional impact of bringing back an old melody in a new way can be potent, but it needs to be set up properly. First, for maximum impact, the melody that you call back to has to be presented in a totally different context. You want the listener to have that moment of, "Oh, I know that melody," and then that spark of recognition can be coaxed into a flame by giving the old melody a completely different emotional tenor. But to have that initial reaction of recognizing an old melody, the melody has to, first of all, have been presented in a way that the listener would be sure to remember it. And also, it has to have been long enough since they last heard it in the piece that it feels like a callback when the melody returns. Going back and forth between the Brinstar and Kraid themes twice establishes them as important themes in the arrangement, making either of them a potential candidate for bringing back. But then, to get the space necessary in the arrangement to make a callback feel like a return of an old theme, there needed to be another new section taking the listener somewhere else. For this, I used the Escape theme from Metroid's soundtrack, which plays as Samus makes her daring escape after defeating Mother Brain before the whole planet explodes. It made for a perfect development section to the arrangement, actually. It has the same triplet shuffle feel as the Brinstar theme, but the same sense of danger as Kraid's theme, so it feels like it's expanding on all of the material we've been exposed to so far. I could even layer the 16th note run from Kraid's theme over top of this section to play into the hero and villain dynamic in the suite. It feels like Kraid is pursuing Samus in a deadly chase before the music builds up into a heroic horn melody. Okay, we finally got enough space from the original Kraid's theme section that we can bring it back in a new way. In a move that I took from Yes's Roundabout, I let the arrangement fall apart and then brought back the introductory figure of the piece. This puts the listener in that headspace of, oh, I remember that, which sets them up for our big, impactful moment. A version of Kraid's theme reharmonized to feel delicate and quietly introspective. As a constantly repeating figure in the original Kraid's theme, this line feels so creepy, but with a little added space, it's actually a really pretty melody. I love how it leaps around these big intervals and then comes down to settle on its lowest point at the end. Breaking up the phrases a little and reharmonizing it with the classic J-pop turnaround, a 4 chord to the 5 chord over the 4, to the 1 chord in first inversion, to the 6 chord, puts the same melody in a new light. Hearing this new version also retroactively makes the earlier incarnation of the theme feel deeper. From this lowest, most delicate point, I could build the arrangement back up, taking this piano solo section and gradually increasing the volume and tempo until we explode back into our Brinstar theme in its original form. This also feels like a big moment actually, a triumphant arrival, a return to the familiar after our departure into the strange, so maybe I should add a method 1B, bring back an old melody in an old way. Now, not all of these techniques require as careful a structural design to make work. Sometimes simply taking away notes at the right moment can have the most impact. The arrangement I'm most proud of on the album is of the Ballad of the Windfish from Link's Awakening. It's maybe one of the most gorgeous pieces ever put in a video game. It shows up in a few different forms throughout Link's Awakening. For the emotional tone of my arrangement, I was inspired by the scene where Link and Marin share a quiet moment on the beach together as a brief respite from Link's adventure. Talk about impactful moments. This part of the game doesn't last more than a minute, but it colors the whole rest of the game with a heartbreaking undertone. Now this scene was the emotional inspiration, but for the actual mechanics of the arrangement, I drew from this other version of the piece where Marin and Link perform the Ballad of the Windfish as a duet. The beauty of the composition here is, to some degree, trapped in the small confines of the Game Boy hardware, so to flesh it out, I brought in a string quartet alongside a more typical jazz trio of piano, drums, and saxophone. In the original, we see Marin and Link trading phrases before coming together to play the bridge in harmony, and I arranged the melody the same way but as a duet between soprano saxophone and cello. After an absolutely devastating piano solo taken by Mr. Carter Graham and a fearsome soprano sax solo by Niall Cade, we come back to the melody of the piece played by harmonized strings. When we arrive at the tune's B section for the second time, the arrangement pulls back a bit as soprano sax and cello once again harmonize the melody. This leads up to our second technique for making a big, impactful moment. It was pretty late in the process of arranging this track that I decided to have the band drop out in this last bar of the phrase, but I think it increases the emotional weight of the melody here by like 10 times. Like with the Metroid moment, this effect only has the impact it does thanks to where it sits in the whole form. This is the second time we're playing through this section of the music, after we've already had a big emotional climax within the soprano sax solo, and so as listeners we kind of feel like we're on a victory lap. We know what to expect, we've heard this before. The first time through this bridge section, the soprano sax had the lead and the cello harmonized it a sixth below, but the second time the two switch roles. The cello takes the lead and the sax harmonizes it a third above. This puts both instruments, particularly in this last bar of the phrase, up into the very top of their range, and you can feel that strain in their playing. But this isn't a bad thing. By isolating this moment with the rug pull band dropout, we amplify the emotional weight that this strain carries. I wanted to portray both characters' understanding of just how fleeting their peaceful moment on the beach was going to be, even as they tried to enjoy it. Putting a spotlight on an emotionally potent part of a performance is an easy way to let your performers give your arrangement an impactful musical moment, and the simplest way to put a spotlight on an element of your arrangement is to just take away everything else. This arrangement only works at all thanks to the absolutely stunning performances by the band, specifically Sam Nadarak on cello, Niall Cade on soprano sax, and Carter Graham on piano. Their playing does justice to how this moment in the original game made me feel. Now, my last technique for making an impactful musical moment is using contrast. And for this, I want to showcase my arrangement of the introduction and first level music from Castlevania 3. The first level theme on the original NES absolutely rips. This is such a great riff, and it translates really well to a live band. But what if we wanted to give it even more impact? The easiest way is through contrast. This riff is fast and loud and it hits hard, so if we put something slow and gentle right before it, it'll elevate the shift into the riff from just something that works to a dramatic musical moment. The introduction to this arrangement, taken from the music scoring the game's introductory cutscene, is in a slow 3/4 time signature. This heartfelt section towards the end is in E flat major, playing out a pretty E flat to E flat 9 to A flat to A flat minor loop over an E flat bass pedal. I used this intro pretty much as is for my arrangement, but I changed the last note to hang on a surprise A7 altered chord rather than the D-flat 7 of the original. This comes as a bit of a curveball in the key of E-flat and kind of sounds gross when it first drops in, but catching the listener off guard like that with this chord leaves them wide open for the sucker punch that is the D minor main riff of the first level theme dropping on them right after. Contrast creates impact, and the contrast in time signature, rhythmic feel, key, mood, and tone all work together to set up this riff for success. I think this is a moment that plays better live than it does on the recording though, to be honest. It's sometimes tough to tell when you're writing or arranging music if the moments that feel good for you are going to translate to another listener. But I got the opportunity to play both these Metroid and Castlevania arrangements live a couple of times in the last year, and after talking to the audiences after these shows, I can say with authority that these moments do in fact hit. Thank you for indulging me in going through my own arrangements. I hope this gave you something helpful to consider for your own writing and arranging, and if you want to hear more, my album Get Good is streaming everywhere and for sale on Bandcamp. It's got 8 arrangements of NES and Game Boy tunes, it's got some absolutely killer solos from the band on there, and some other memorable moments that I think you would probably dig if you're the kind of nerd to click on a video like this. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.